So this really doesn't have much to do with what we're talking about, but I just wanted to show you two different lighting scenarios. When you start getting into the portrait project, think about what direction the light's coming from. Okay, same face, same camera to subject distance, and all we've done is just spin the mannequin. Right. So the one on the left, the light's coming from her right. Right? It's out here somewhere, and the light is blasting on her face, just illuminating that oval of her face. Right. Whereas this one, right, the light's coming in and it's illuminating the broad side of her face, or this half of her face. So it looks like a different face. It looks like a different person, and all that is, right, is changing that direction of light. Is it hitting the broad side of the face, which is illuminating the ear and the cheek, or are we keeping that in shadow and just illuminating the oval of the face? So think about that, and think about that, and how you position your subject in relationship to the light. When we're talking about natural light, we're usually talking about the sun or a window. We can't really move that. It's fixed. So we have to move our model. When we get to artificial light, we can take the light and put it anywhere. Put the model anywhere. A little bit easier. But when it comes to natural light, you're dealing with a window, you're dealing with the sun, you're dealing with something like that, which is a little harder to move unless you go to a different window or something like that. So then the subject needs to move. Okay, artificial light, we have the same ability to change the quantity, the quality, the color, and we can shape it. There's not as much light when it comes to artificial light. I don't know any light fixtures that are as bright as the sun. So we're always fighting how much light there is. And every time we change some part of that light, the quality, the color, we start shaping it, we start removing even more. And so we get into the situation where we have less and less and less light. So quantity is really important. And again, we use f-stop and shutter speed and ISO to compensate for that quantity being less than the sun. And we've talked about how we can play with those controls when we get in a situation where we need to have a particular f-stop and shutter speed combination with the amount of light that's available, and then we move to the ISO to help compensate for that. With artificial light, there's also specular and diffuse. There's a bare light bulb, a flash, on-camera flash, that little teeny xenon tube, all very small point light sources, so they create a specular light. Whereas a fluorescent tube creates a more diffuse light. You can see that by putting your hand in front of a bare bulb and you see a distinct shadow projected onto the wall or the desk. You put your hand in front of a fluorescent light, there's really no shadow on the desk or the wall because the light's bouncing around all over the place. So again, with artificial light, we have specular or diffuse, depending on the actual light source. So here's an example on a face, a real face this time. Here we have a hard light source or a specular light source. Draw your attention to that shadow again by the nose, the shadow in here, and look at the hair. Right? Look at the hair, how shiny it is. As opposed to the image on the right, where it's a softer light source. You can see that shadow by her nose is softer. It's not as dark. There's a little bit less contrast. And look at the hair. It's taken on a more longer or wider range of tones, so you can see it all, not just one little area. In here, there's even a little bit more light bouncing around. Okay. Same camera to subject distance. Same light source. Well, sorry, different light source. One's a point and one's a specular, or one's a broad light source. But different light sources. But everything else remained the same in the image. Here's a way to get a little bit closer view of what happens with the skin, right? The skin's pretty shiny. Most people, especially towards the end of the day, they have this little shininess to their skin because the oil on their skin. Where the specular light source, right, or the point light source, illuminates all of those highlights. Where the diffuse light source tends to blend those a little bit. Sorry, I have a little bit of a frog in my throat today. There's a little bit of coughing. I hope you can excuse that. So we have different color temperatures for artificial light, like we talked about in the last section. Candlelight being a lower color temperature, much more yellow. Fluorescent tubes, they come in all different, sorts now. CFL bulbs are pretty much gone for all intents and purposes, being replaced by LED. There are some artificial light sources that are the same color temperature as daylight. They're very expensive. Not something you just come across anywhere, something you probably would rent or specifically go to a store to find a light with that color temperature, but not something you'd probably own and have laying around. The LED bulb or array, it can be tuned to different color temperatures, so it's got lots of flexibility. This is the new sort of way we're going to be lighting with artificial light. Everything's going to be moving towards LED. Right? It's brighter, it's lower power consumption, it's not as hot. There's all kinds of reasons why an LED bulb or an LED array of bulbs are becoming more and more popular of a light source for photographers and video and motion picture people as well. Remember, the higher the color temperature, the more blue the light is. The lower the color temperature, the more red or yellow the light is. Right? So we care about those two extremes. Right? We have things in between. But remember that lower or higher color temperature, the more blue. Lower color temperature, red/yellow. Okay? With artificial light, it works the same way. Right? When we mix these light, the colors of light together, we get the same result. The same opposites react to each other. The same analogous colors react to each other. Nothing different than with available light. Here's a lighting balance problem. We have fluorescent lights in here, up on top, which probably have a green component. We have some spotlights here, track lighting, that has a yellow component. They're a little bit lower color temperature. And then we have outside. So basically we have three different colors of light illuminating these products in the Hallmark store. Now, if you walk in there, it's not really that big of a deal to your eye, because you look at this wood table and say, oh, it's a wood table. You look at this, this stand, and it's, got a little bit of white in it, and, your eye does some really nice adjustments. But if you were the maker of the soap or bath product and this kind of blue-greeny color was your trademark, which it looks like it is, you'd want to represent that color as true as possible. And under these lights, that's not true. That's not the proper color. All right. So as a photographer and doing architecture, interior, getting the color right is very important. Designers work very hard with colors of couches, carpet, wall colors, all to match, right? To come together and form a nice family or a nice mood. And if you go in there with the camera with different colored light sources, and instead of having a green couch, you get a blue couch, you're not going to be very popular. Okay? So this is with the camera balanced on daylight. So it's compensating for the light outside. Here I changed the white balance to tungsten or a lower color temperature, 32. You can see these are neutral, almost. But look at how blue everything got. There's so much outside light coming in. Everything got blue. And then I turned my camera to that little fluorescent tube. And again, these went back to being yellow. And this looks a lot like the first one. Okay? So really, none of these are correct. Right? None of these are the right color temperature for that display. Now, what you could do is come in and mask the display, fix that color, and then fix the room color independently. And in Photoshop, Lightroom, you can do that and probably get away with it. And it's probably worth it for one image. But if you're shooting 20 or 30 images of the interior of this Hallmark store, that's a lot of work. You're not going to make very much money. So the idea would be to eliminate some of these colors. Can you turn off the fluorescent lights? Can you turn off the track lights? And just let the daylight come in? If you did, all that foreground would be dark. The back would be nice. The background would be nice. All one color temperature. But everything in the foreground would be very dark because there's no light getting to it. So then you'd have to put some other artificial light in the room that match daylight. And that happens to be electronic flash. Right? Sun at noon is 5500. Electronic flash, 5500. So you take a flash, you pop it in the ceiling, illuminate the foreground, voila. Consistent color temperature between the outside and the inside, and everything should balance up very nicely. So these are the kind of reasons why I'm talking about, the different colors of artificial light and the different colors of natural light, and how as photographers we're problem solvers. And how can we take those colors and maximize the color to complement the photograph, or minimize the color that detracts from the photograph? Now, some of these concepts might be, a little bit outside your wheelhouse right now because you're beginning photographers, beginning photography. But as we move through future courses, if you choose to hang around and take some more classes, we'll talk more and more about this, especially in the color class, about how we work ourselves around these kinds of issues and how we can fix it, right? And how we can minimize it or maximize it. I love to tell the story. I went into the hospital for a procedure on a Friday. It didn't go so well, so they kept me over the weekend. I was kind of angry because I felt really good. Nothing was wrong with me. They were just doing it as a precautionary measure. And so I had my camera with me. I had somebody bring my camera in because I was going to be there for the weekend and I might as well make pictures in the hospital room. And so I chose to shoot pictures of the staff and the food and everything around me with that ugly green institutional fluorescent light. So the food was shot, it was green, the nurses were green, the doctors were green, everything was green. To have it that ugly kind of feel. Because I was angry. I was making mad pictures and I wanted to be ugly. All right? So in that case, I took that color temperature of the lights and I maximized that to add to, the tension or the feel of the image. That ugly institutional green. Whereas, most of the time when I'm shooting, the opposite would happen. Is that I would be taking the institutional ugly green out of the picture and trying to neutralize everything and make it look more normal. Okay? So before automatic white balance, we had filters. You may come across these in old camera kits that you borrow from your parents or your friends. There used to be filters that would make the correction from tungsten to daylight, or 3200 to 55, or the other way around, 5500 to 3200, or get rid of that green in the fluorescent lights. Now remember, the opposite of green is magenta. So if I wanted to get rid of that institutional green, I'd have to add magenta. So that FLD filter that translates takes fluorescent lights and matches it to daylight is a 30 or 40 magenta. And there's many more of these. The blue light takes the 3200 degrees and makes it more blue, so it matches daylight. The amber filter, 85B, takes daylight, which is a higher color temperature, and makes it a lower color temperature to match the other light in the room that might be on the warmer side. So these are filters you can filter the light source, the window, or you can filter your camera to make global corrections. Now we really don't have a use for these things because we have automatic white balance that we can do global settings on our camera with a touch of a button instead of carrying all these filters around with us today. Here's just a bunch more filters from an old textbook. The blue filter, there's an 80 A, B, C, D. You can see in the next column over, it's got some exposure compensation because of how dark it is, and it absorbs some of the wavelengths. And what it does in the next column, conversion in degrees Kelvin. And Myad shift is another way to describe color. So we have the blue and the amber and kind of what it controls. Okay, these aren't going to be on a test. You have no reason to go buy these and use these. Knowing they're available can help solve some problems if you have to put something over an entire window to change the color. But for the most part, these filters are no longer so integral to your camera kit when you're going out shooting. It's having these kind of filters available. There's light balancing filters or even theatrical filters that we can use on our artificial lights or our camera. There's an 81 series that's yellow, an 82 series that's blue. There's CC filters that are, red, green, and blue, yellow, magenta, and cyan. And there's 100 different reds and 100 different blues and 100 different yellows and 100 different oranges. And that's to put over the light source to change the color a little bit, to make it kind of an interesting photograph. I remember shooting at Xerox, and I'd shoot these crazy, wild, scientific machines, and they'd want it to look all crazy. So I'd put red filters and green filters and blue filters and highlight these different areas of the room, and it would look like this crazy, colorful, scientific lab with all these different colors that meant nothing other than it had the little punch to the photograph. So that's certainly another way you can use filters to create some interesting color within a photograph that may not have that much color, and it may be very monochromatic, but you can change it with the filters over the light source if you choose to. Again, here's another chart with balancing filters, and you can see the conversion that it makes. So just an example that there's a lot of them out there, and they do a lot of. You can go into any camera store and say, "Give me an 82B," and they know exactly what that is, or an 81C, and they know exactly what that is, and they hand you a filter, and you pay your $10 and walk out. You just got to know what to do with it once you get it.